All right, guys, welcome back to our final heredity lecture. We're going to be talking about influences on phenotype. So remember, phenotype is our expressed observable trait. This is physical traits that we can see, or just the physical expressions of the traits. So pheno for physical, it's influenced by mutations, physical environment, and your inherited DNA. Environmental influences have a couple of different things here. So some organisms have traits that can be triggered by heat or acidity or the presence or absence of key nutrients. So think of cats that have darker or lighter spots around the nose and ears. Same with rabbits. Those are areas that are typically colder than the rest of the body. So sometimes they'll have a trait where the fur color will be different based on that temperature. Um, the one key thing to note here is that it does not actually modify the gene itself. It just activates or deactivates the gene in question. Natural selection can also influence phenotype. Sometimes alleles that are detrimental can be removed, or you'll see an increase if one is a better fit for an environment. So those are other ways that it can be influenced. I also want to take a minute to talk about non-Mendelian inheritance. So there are a couple different types of inheritance patterns that we know of that are fairly common that don't follow those rules of complete dominance. So the first one is incomplete dominance. This is where you get phenotype blends. So it's very important not to confuse this one with codominance, which we're going to talk about next. This is where if you take a red flower and a white flower, you're going to get a pink flower. You're going to see a mix of the phenotypes without having the original phenotypes as distinct in the organism's traits. Codominance, on the other hand, is where both are expressed, but they're not blended. They're side by side. So this could be multiple colors, spots, stripes. So please be very careful not to mix these up. So incomplete, they're going to blend together. You're not going to see any of the original traits. Codominance, like having company over, you're going to see them together. Another thing that we mentioned earlier is polygenic traits. These are traits that are affected by more than one gene. So like height, skin color, eye color. Anytime you've got things where you've got gradients and ranges, often those are polygenic because you've got a lot of things going into the cascade that turns them on or off. The last one we're going to talk about for these different types is epistasis. We're not going to do a whole lot with this one in this class. I just want you to know it exists. So this is where an allele can actually mask another one or interfere with its expression. So it's considered antagonistic. It means that when you have a certain trait, it can get hidden if another trait is present. And we can see with our brown, black, and white mice, the white is an albino. The black gets masked except for in very specific circumstances. Another type of trait we are going to talk about is multiple alleles. The most common allele is going to be known as your wild type. Blood type is an example of this. We have 3 alleles for this. We have I sub A, I sub B, and then lowercase I. When you have multiple alleles, you can actually have different dominance relationships. So it's not in and of itself a different inheritance pattern, but rather a combination of the other ones. So for instance, blood type has codominance with A and B, but then A and B have a standard Mendelian inheritance pattern when it comes to the little I, the O. Another thing we'll often see is sex-linked traits. This is where they can be linked to a specific chromosome, and typically they're linked to the X chromosome. Not always, but often. And so they'll only appear when that chromosome is present. However, these linked traits don't follow the rules of independent assortment because they are linked to the X. So if it were linked to a Y, for instance, then it would never be something that a female could have, right? Because it would only pass along with the Y chromosome. Since it is most commonly on X, males tend to actually be more affected because they only have one copy of that X gene. Remember, we talked about how your body is able to use the undamaged gene first if you have one, or the one that will act appropriately typically. And in this case, if you only have one copy, then you're kind of out of luck. So males tend to be most affected if you have the XY genotype, just because you only have one copy of those X traits. All right, so that is all of Unit 4. Please make sure to review the lectures and the activities and come ask for help if you need it. Thanks, guys.